Hey everyone, welcome to Zonan Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. This is, of course, a podcast exploring the connections between anime and Canadian media. We talk about a lot of things related to that, but the thing that the audience, you guys, keep demanding over and over again is more voice actor interviews. More voice actor interviews. Well, guess what? Today we're doing another voice actor interview with a very notable Canadian voice actor. It is, I believe it's Cole motherfucking Howard?
To some, yes.
To some, okay.
Yes.
So Cole, I think folks might recognize you from a few titles like Zoids Wild and Dragon Prince and Gintama. And what else have you done? Who are you exactly?
Right. Well, I'm as previously stated, I am Cole motherfucking Howard to some. I've been doing professional voiceover for the better part of 20 years. A lot of that has been anime. A lot of that has been other stuff like My Little Pony and Spider-Man and the Dragon Prince, like you noted. But yeah, mostly I'm just a voiceover actor who will do whatever my agent sends me out to do.
And you said you started around 20 years ago. You really began your career doing the voices of teenage boys, and you have continued more or less to do the voices of teenage boys, from what I've noticed.
Yes, that is very accurate. So years ago, I came to the determination that I will never develop a delicious, beautiful baritone voice. I will never be Brian Drummond or Ian Hanlon, for that matter, with a delicious, low voice. I will forever sound like this, which is great. And I came to terms with that, and now I realize that just sounding like this is a really, really good place to be for voiceover. So that's
it really is, because you're able to nail that shonen protagonist kind of tone. That is a very narrow range.
It is.
It's you can't, like in Japan, typically those characters are usually just voiced by female voice actresses, and they just kind of leave it at that. Sometimes they do that in English, but it doesn't always work. And then when you're trying to you can get an actual teenager to do the voice, but when you're getting him to do 300 episodes of something, might not work in the long term. Not every adult male can really capture that tone, but I mean, you do it so well. I watched some episodes of Zoids Wild, and you just completely nail that shonen protagonist vibe.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a long time in development. Like, honestly, when I first started doing this work, I was 15, 16, and so that came really naturally to me. And then as I got older, and my voice changed, obviously, as everyone's does. I didn't always sound this delicious and amazing. I just had to figure out how to keep finding that range in me, and it's relatively easy to pitch your voice up, but I don't think that's what makes a good hero sound. I think that good hero sound you have to sound like you're wide-eyed, and just full of excitement and exuberance. And, I think for as much as it is about what the voice sounds like, I think it's always about how the character sounds, and that sounds a little high-minded, but I'm standing by it.
Yeah. And you said you started around the age of 15. So, the picture of you find on IMDb and Wikipedia, and I think is the first Google image that comes up for Cole Howard. How old were you in that pic?
Oh gosh, if it's the memory I'm picturing, or if it's the picture I'm remembering, I'm wearing a college shirt, that would have been when I was. That's actually probably when I was 18. I think that picture was taken with me next to my first car, and then it just got cropped and somehow thrown on the internet, and now that's just me forever.
It's on IMDb, so that's how you're going to be immortalized.
Amazing.
There's a few more recent ones floating around. I think Anime News Networks was more up to date. Before I get into the most popular questions, like what inspires you, how'd you get started in voice acting, how can I become a voice actor? I want to talk about one thing that you've done in just the last few years that I think made quite a splash, which is you were Shinpachi in season 3 of Gintama.
Yeah.
So what happened with this was it was a rare project that Crunchyroll sent to Ocean Studios in Vancouver. They recorded it years ago, put it in a vault somewhere for like 2 or 3 years, and then finally released it, and then didn't dub anymore, and then Hulu got the first 2 seasons, and then they moved the production to Miami. Is this the story of your life, Cole?
I mean, not so much. Although, been recast a fair amount of times.
Yeah.
No, not so much. And actually, I didn't know that it went to Miami. I mean, all power to the guy who got Shinpachi. It's one of the hardest roles I've ever played in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I had Michael Dangerfield on the show a couple of years ago talking about doing Gintoki, and he was kind of just amazed that he made it through that experience.
Yep.
Yeah. I know talking with him, he wasn't really familiar with the show going in, and he just went for it without questioning anything, and the results were kind of amazing. So Cole, I know you are like an anime and animation fan. Were you familiar with Gintama when you were going into that role?
I wasn't familiar with it explicitly until I booked it, because I believe I went in and it the audition was under like a code name, so I didn't know what the actual show was, and so I just went in and I did my thing, and I had a good time recording the audition, and then I left, and then when the production team got in touch with me, they're like, okay, yeah, you got this thing, and we're gonna send you the first couple episodes, or we're gonna direct you to the first couple episodes, and that rarely happens with ADR stuff, like with dubbed stuff, with anime shows, like with Zoids, for instance. I auditioned for it and I got the thing, and then I just showed up on the first day and I saw the script, and it was like the first frames of the show I had seen, essentially. And so I was pretty surprised that they were sending us this footage of this show.
I know, like, Michael said that he didn't always understand the humor. He just kind of rolled with it. Did you find that you were just rolling with it a lot of the time, or did you like do research, or how much did you kind of dig your teeth into it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when you're dubbing over a show, when you're dubbing over an anime series, it's always good to be familiar with the property, and it's good to know, familiarize yourself with like the tone of the show, and how the show likes to present itself and this kind of stuff. But also, as an actor, like, that's not really your job. Your job isn't to direct the tone of the show. That's the director's job, and the director has talk to the production team. They know what they're doing. They know what their focus is. They know what they're trying to accomplish. And so I think you can really shoot yourself in the foot coming in with too much of an idea of what this show's supposed to be and what I'm supposed to do with it. And fortunately, at Ocean, like, Carl Willems, who's worked there forever, who's an incredible director, it's really awesome to go into a session with Carl because he knows what he's looking for. He knows where he's trying to get you to go. And he knows what the production team wants. So I guess that's a long way of answering your question, but my answer would be no. I wasn't overly familiar with the show. I was just ready to go in and just do whatever they wanted me to do, and that ended up being really, really hard.
Yeah, I've watched some episodes of that dub, and I just kind of can't believe what I'm hearing a lot of the time. It's like, wow, they made this work somehow. I can't even begin to imagine how. It seems like it just kind of happened. Obviously, it didn't just happen. A lot of work had to have gone into it, but
tons. But yeah, every time I see Danger, he still calls me Patchy from time to time. But every time I see Mike Dangerfield, like there is kind of this like we're like old war buddies. We look at one another and it's like the old Dragon Ball guys have that too. They have that with themselves, where it's just like, yeah, we worked our asses off on that.
And Dragon Ball is something you did finally get to be involved with. That was an even more tragic story, because you dubbed that whole Dragon Ball Z Kai dub, and it's just sitting in a vault somewhere, apparently never to be seen or spoken of, except on here on this show, which is fine because this has been public knowledge for a while now. But you were at 17.
Yeah, very cool. And like really the opposite of Shinpachi in terms of being cast. Like, I always wanted to be on Dragon Ball. It's the reason I got into voiceover. One of the reasons I got into voiceover. And I always wanted to be on that show. I always wanted to be like Trunks or like Gohan or something. But But when I got cast as 17, I was like, this is great. I don't have to do any screaming. I don't have to do any like power up noises. I just get to play this cool, calm, collected android character. And I was like, oh man, this is great. It was a dream come true. Like short of playing a character who wears a mask in a dub, that is that's about as best you can ask for, is play like a really monotonous android. Like, please.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to be involved with it. I hope we can see that dub someday. But yeah, what a weird mystery around that one. It's still amazing that they dubbed that whole thing and then just not do anything with it. But well, it's a weird business sometimes, I guess.
And how weird and mysterious.
Cole, like quite a few voice actors who are active now, you started out in Calgary, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So can you just kind of how did things get started for you in for voice acting or acting in general?
Yeah, another great question. And so I was always a pretty performative kid, safe to say. And my mom, bless her heart, she recognized this in me, and so she started putting me into like community theater and stuff in Edmonton, where I was born. Mm-hmm. I did community theater for a while, and I was in like this recurring production of A Christmas Carol. And because I was always this tiny little kid, I didn't age out of that role. So I played pretty much the same roles, like street urchins or whatever in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I played that for like 5 years in a row, 6 years in a row. And so late in that run, 5 years into it, one of the grown-up actors said to me, he's like, have you ever considered doing voiceover? I was like, no, I don't even know what that is. And he's like, oh, you really should. And that was basically it. And then I took that summer, I think I took a film acting workshop, and the woman who was running it also ran a voiceover workshop. Her name was Deb Monroe. And so I took her class, and immediately I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is great. And then she set me up with an audition for this studio in Calgary called Chinook Animation. Mm-hmm. And I remember my mom took the day off work, and she was driving me down to Calgary. It's about a 3-hour drive. And the whole way down, we're just listening to classic rock. We're just having a great time. It's really fun. And we get 20 minutes out, and Mom turns down the radio, and she goes, so what are you going to do? And I was like, I hadn't even thought about it. I don't know. I was like, that's a great question. What am I going to do? Because that's how I always am. And so Mom, in her infinite wisdom, was just like, because I was like, oh, I'll do this accent, and I'll do this voice, and I'll do this, and I'll do this. And she was like, you know what you should do? Just talk like yourself. You should just talk like yourself. And I was like, okay. So I went in, and, I gave him a little bit of me just being young. And then I gave him some weird, I don't know, some sort of doing this kind of thing or whatever. Anyways, I did a few voices, and they were just like, yeah, that's great. We'll be in touch. And then a week and a half later, they had me playing Mega Man for a PSP game. It was wild, and it was awesome. I was in the 11th grade at the time, and it was so friggin' cool to be like, sorry, Teach, can't come in. I'm going down to Calgary to be in TV.
Which Mega Man game was that?
That was Mega Man Powered Up for the PSP. It was my first ever paying voiceover gig.
And was that the only one you did for Mega Man?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, the only video game, yeah.
And at that point, were you... what kind of work were you getting mostly when you started? Was it more video game work, or I know that this was the point of time when a lot of Bandai Entertainment's anime was being sent to the Calgary studios.
Yeah, so Mega Man Powered Up was the only video game I did till I moved to Vancouver in 2008. Okay. So I did Powered Up, which was really cool, and then after that, I'm trying to think what came next. I know shortly after that, I did the My Hime dub, and then I did and then I did the La Ueki. Yeah.
La Ueki. Yeah. So in My Hime and My Otome, you were Takumi, who's the main character's brother. I guess if people don't remember My Hime, it was kind of a big thing when it was first airing. It was mid 2000s. It's this stupidly horny mid-2000s Sunrise anime with lots of lesbian undertones, and they seem to fight each other with Zoids, essentially. I mean, they're basically Zoids.
Like honestly, I know nothing about that show because everything my character did was just show up and kind of like ogle his sister and their friends and just leave. Like all it was it was a lot of like open mouth blushing reacts, like a lot of like you know.
What, you were 15 or 16 when you recorded that one. What was it like recording that as a tender child?
I mean, it was hilarious, man. Like it was hilarious. I would typically, because I lived in Edmonton 3 hours away, they'd schedule me over 2 days and they had this weird little apartment that I could stay at overnight. It was a really cool setup. And so I'd take the bus down, I'd take the commuter bus down to Calgary, and I'd go and I'd record for the first day, and then I'd stay in this apartment by myself, like this 15-year-old. I'd borrow a bunch of movies from Brad the engineer. And I'd just watch those movies all night and eat Chinese food. And then the next day I'd come back and record. So it was really awesome. I felt like a rock star, man. It was great. And I'd go in and we'd, because, you know, I was like, I don't know, because of stuff, I was recording like 6 hours a day. Like it was long recording sessions, but it was awesome. It was great.
That show currently is unlicensed, but someone just dumped the whole thing on YouTube. It's definitely funny to go back to. If you hadn't watched it, it's like you're watching something out of time. it is so mid 2000s. But yeah, also, you know, going back to your ability to just perfectly do that shonen protagonist voice. Yeah, you were the main character Kosuke in Law of Ueki. Law of Ueki. There's no good way to pronounce that.
It's so hard to say.
So if I recall, I think Geneon was doing that title around the mid 2000s, and I don't think they did the whole thing. Do you remember if that was like a partial job or what? What was that? And you were doing that around the same time as Maihime?
Yeah, I mean it all kind of blurs together of those couple years. But yeah, Ueki, man, like Ueki must have gone for like 50 plus episodes. Yeah, I know we did a ton of them. I think we did maybe 70 or so. It was awesome. It was great work. And like, honestly, man, like invaluable in terms of giving me reps behind a mic, before I came out here. Like just the hours and hours of working with the same engineer and then later director, on that series was so invaluable. It taught me so much about how to be a good professional and an efficient ADR, actor. It was great. Really, really bizarre show, but it was fun to do for sure.
Yeah, definitely one of those shonen action shows that are just like, let's see what weird elements we can combine together and see what sticks kind of thing. But I know it was pretty popular back at that time that it was running. That too is just, I don't know if anyone has the rights to that right now. I think that also might be something where where you can get the dubbed episodes on YouTube. But I don't know if the whole thing got released. I think it may have only gotten like 39 episodes out or something like that. I'll double check it if there's anything out there. I'll let you know.
My mom's ringtone has been the Love Ueki theme song since I did the show.
That's adorable. That's really great.
Oh, it's super adorable. Yeah, I think actually my mom has. I think she found. I might have this wrong, but I feel like she found our dub on DVD. Actually.
Yeah, that was it. It got released on DVD. I think. It was in stores for sure. I remember.
So we have those somewhere at my house.
Yeah, that one never got on TV or anything though. But yeah, it's definitely, I can see why that would be a formative job for you. Also, while you were in Calgary, I think you also did, you were in Full Moon, Osagashite?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Not so much. I remember Hoop Days. I remember doing the basketball one, Hoop Days. Oh, I remember doing, what the hell was that show called? Oh, sorry. I lost it.
Tideline Blue?
That's the one. Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was one of my early jobs too. I remember I walked in on my first session and I looked at the script and it was this big old monologue. And I was like, oh my God, like I have to mouth flap match all of this. And then I realized my character was wearing a mask. I was just like, this is awesome. This is great. Don't have to match any flaps. I just got to time it out. Perfect.
Yeah, that's another one of those Bandai Entertainment titles from that time that I think it's just kind of lost right now. A lot of the major ones got relicensed, but some of them are just kind of in purgatory. But
Yeah,
that just makes it easier to pirate, I guess.
There's that.
And and you were Sato in Hoop Days, which was originally titled Dear Boys in Japanese. I guess they changed it because they didn't want it to sound gay or something like that. This was back when they were like super paranoid about license or releasing any sports anime because they're like, it doesn't sell. Anime fans don't like sports. They have since realized that leaning into the gayness is actually how you sell that stuff. But do you remember anything about doing that series?
I remember that all the scripts were called Dear Boys, and we talked about that a lot at length. But no, I remember actually that was my first introduction to like sports in anime, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was really into basketball at the time. And I was just like, this is so cool. I would absolutely watch this show if it was on, after, like before Gundam Wing or something.
Yeah.
But, it was never meant to be.
Yeah, it never caught on TV really, but a lot of the stuff's like popping up on Netflix. Like you can watch like Haikyuu. Those are on Netflix now. So I think that kind of thing's kind of starting to catch on many years later. But yeah, at that time, sports anime was, it was considered a hard sell, and like you said, a lot of people were surprised it even existed. But it's a huge thing in Japan to have every magazine has like a couple sports titles going at any time. So
right, yeah.
And was there anything else that you did while you were in Calgary that you can remember?
No, I don't know. I mean, I remember going down there a lot, and I remember especially doing Ueki. I remember doing that, like, when I think of my time in Calgary, I think of going and recording Ueki, because it was just, we did it, I mean, it was legitimately, like, once every 2 weeks, I would spend 2 days down in Calgary just recording a ton of this show, and it was the coolest thing to tell and I was in, like, this cool arts school, and it was so cool to tell all the other actor kids that I was like, oh, sorry, gang, I wish I could be there for rehearsal for our student production, but I gotta be in Calgary. I'm recording cartoons. It was the coolest thing ever. But it also taught me a really valuable lesson that a lot of people tire really quickly of listening to you talk about voicing for cartoons, unless they're a very specific group of people.
So yeah, you started in Calgary, and at some point you made the move over to Vancouver. And I had Matthew Erickson on the show before, and I will admit I copy and pasted a bunch of questions I asked him into yours. But what was your what brought you to Vancouver? What was your experience? Or were you doing like remote work with Vancouver studios beforehand, or what was your story there?
Right. So Chinook and Ocean are kind of married. They're under the same kind of production group. And so I had worked with a Vancouver director before, a couple of them. But what actually brought me out to Vancouver was two things. One was I was just stagnating in Edmonton after I graduated. There was a little bit of voiceover stuff, but it wasn't that it wasn't going to keep me afloat in Edmonton, and I had no desire to move to Calgary. And then my dad got sick, and my dad lives in BC, and so my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and I decided, because I had my car and I had nothing going on, that I was just going to head out and go live with him. So I moved out, and I was living with Dad on Salt Spring, and that was great. And then after a bit of time, I kind of got lucky with just like my old Calgary connections kind of came up, and I ended up getting to record Del Toro Quest in here in Vancouver, which was really, really great. And that was the first time I got to work with Carl in person, which was sweet.
That show was big in Australia, from what I recall.
Man, well, say what you will about Australians, they got great taste. And so anyways, that's what brought me out to BC. And so all that aside, the fact that I was stagnating and the fact that Dad was sick and all this, more than anything else, I really wanted to be a voiceover actor, and I really wanted to just keep doing that. It became the thing that I not only really loved doing, but something that I determined I was rather good at. And so I was just like, I just want to make this happen. And Vancouver seemed like the right avenue for it. And yeah, and then I just kept getting lucky.
So at this point, you still hadn't like defined yourself as, or defined voice acting as your career?
Yeah, I would say that happened when I got really lucky and I got my agent. When I got my agent, that's when I was like, okay, I think I can actually I can make a run at being a pro.
Also, regarding Del Toro Quest, it was based on a series of Australian novels. That's why that show is popular there. I don't think it even gained traction here. But that was one of your first big titles in Vancouver?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the best part about it was getting to meet Carl Willems in person, who has like since gone on to become one of my one of my best friends in the city. He'd never admit to that. But I adore that man, and there's I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with him many times throughout my career in Vancouver and even before, like I mentioned, and every time it's been a joy, like an absolute privilege. He made me a better actor and a better professional and a better person. Carl Willems is an absolute rock star. I love that man.
So I know that even though they're both under the Ocean banner, studios in Calgary and Vancouver are a little different. Like one's union, one's non-union. Were there any differences in your experience working on either side?
I mean, I was really just like pretty directionless, and I was just hoping, man. Like I didn't have a plan, I didn't have an agenda. I was just gonna come out to. I was going out to BC to be close to my dad and to be far away from home, and everything else just fell into place. I mean, this isn't saying that I didn't like actively participate in the seeking out of this career, but I got so inordinately lucky by way of meeting good people, but also being in a position where if somebody lobbed an opportunity at me, I was ready to do it. And that's like what the time in Calgary got me to do. Like it gave me more than enough confidence to believe, maybe falsely, to believe that I could absolutely do this as a professional. When I walked into that meeting with my agent, I was so confident. I was so overconfident. And it was, I mean, in retrospect, it makes me cringe. But when I walked into that office, I was like, they have to sign me. Of course. They have to. I'm great at this. Look at my resume or whatever. And none of that means much, but fortunately my agent, had the clairvoyance or at least she believed in me. I walked in and maybe I didn't wow her, but she believed in me, enough to give me a chance. Mm-hmm. And luckily she's still kind of in that boat.
So in Vancouver, you've done a lot of dubbing work, but also prelay work as well, mm-hmm. which I don't think you did too much. Well, you did some of with in Calgary, but you've certainly done more and bigger roles with that here in Vancouver. I think probably two of the most notable ones would be Terramar in My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic and Crowmaster in Dragon Prince, which I know you spoke of quite a bit the last time you were on mm-hmm. On the podcast when we did that Christmas special. So what could you talk about those roles, or just doing prelay in general? How do you find that compared to doing ADR?
Yeah, awesome question. So doing anime and doing ADR dubbing is an incredible way to become a better voiceover actor. I think that, and also that this all stems from theater stuff. Like voiceover, I've always thought is really theatrical and really more so than film and television. And so when I'm working behind a microphone, it's really animated and it's really big, and it always feels like I'm playing to like a 400 seat auditorium. And prelay was just that, but on steroids. Like prelay now is like because you're working in such a constrained space in an ADR dubbing setting, you have to make sure that your performance matches the flaps and matches what's happening on screen. But with prelay, it's like swing for the fences, go try something, go have some fun. Like they're animating this later, so give them something fun to animate. And that is such a freeing and cool experience after you've done a ton of ADR. And so I was just overwhelmed. Like some of the first prelay stuff I got, I was like, I can't believe this. And it felt like Hollywood, man. It felt like you go into some of these big studios in Vancouver when I was just getting to the city, and it was like you see the posters up of like Reboot and Beast Wars and My Little Pony, and you look at it and you go like, that's my childhood. Like this is it. This is where they did that stuff. Anyways, it was very cool. So doing prelay, I mean, getting those first few Vancouver gigs was just like an amazing experience, and it hasn't stopped being an amazing experience.
Yeah, and also in relation to doing the prelay work, there's so much work that is like a dual production between Vancouver and LA. You know, we're seeing fewer projects being sent to Vancouver specifically, but some very high profile stuff gets Vancouver casting as a result of that approach. And you know, I think Dragon Prince definitely falls into that category. And you're in it starting with season 2, and that show's still going on Netflix if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So I don't know what its recording schedule is, but it's been picked up for 4 more seasons.
That's crazy.
So yeah,
that's like almost Rick and Morty level renewal. But I take it's been very successful. What do you have anything else to say about just working on that show or your role on that show as Crowmaster?
Yeah, I mean, that show was so cool, is so cool. Mm-hmm. And I remember my favorite story about this, and forgive me if I've told it before, but my favorite story about Crowmaster was, I mean, I was desperate for any part on that show. You know, I remember I auditioned for all the dude parts, and, you know, I was desperate for any of them, because it looked so cool, and mm-hmm. You can always tell when a show's gonna pop. And anyway, so I finally got this part, this Crowmaster part, and I went in and I was working next to Jason Simpson, who I adore. And, you know, we recorded the scene as written, and then Jason and I were just kind of bantering between takes. And one of the producers who was in the room, one of the writer producers, he like leans in on the mic and he's just like, what you guys were just doing, just do more of that. That was great. And so Jason and I did another like 2 takes of us just kind of goofing around and just, you know, playing with the scene. And I just remember everyone was delighted by what Jason and I did. And I was just over the moon that I just got to go play with my friend. And then they kept bringing me back for that character. And it was such that's a cool experience to just feel like, I don't think that they had too much of a thought about what Crowmaster was supposed to be in the show. And, you know, he's still very much a very tertiary character, but I do feel that they found they found some extra reasons to bring him back just so I could play with Jason some more. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I choose to believe.
I mean, that's how it works a lot of the time. And that's the thing about doing prelay, is that sometimes you can spark things at other levels of the creative process that might not have been there just simply on the writing level itself. So, I mean, it all kind of builds on each other. So,
yeah, totally.
I mean, it makes sense. And My Little Pony, Terramar. So, like, what is your experience with just the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic phenomenon? I know it's kind of done. We're moving on to like new generations of My Little Pony stuff at this point now, I think. But that was it was a big deal.
I mean, the biggest. Yeah. When I was in when I had just moved to the city, 2008, My Little Pony was like kind of hitting its real like zenith, at least in the way that it was discussed in the city. It was the white whale. It was the thing that everyone wanted to get on. And I mean, I was auditioning for MLP like since 2009, 2010, and I was, I'd go out every couple months for a different recurring or something and nothing landed. And it was the white whale. It was the thing I really wanted those words on my resume, for as silly as that sounds. But it's a big deal. It's a big show, and a good credit. And that's really the way I was thinking about it. And then I got on the show finally as Terramar, and the character was a character who actually meant something to me. When I read who the character was and I read his description and, dealing with like divorced families and stuff, it was like, this is great. This is an awesome little bit of representation, and it speaks to who I am as a person. So that was really great. And then, I did the thing, recorded it. It was a dream come true, awesome experience. And then a year later, I guess, after it aired, I got my first ever piece of fan mail from a My Little Pony fan in Arizona. And it was like jaw dropping, because in all that time I was thinking about how this thing how it would be great to have for my career and what a great thing to have on my resume and all this stuff. Then I got the real amazing introduction that, this is a thing that belongs to so many other people, and it means so much to other people. And since then, the MLP fan base have been so gracious and welcoming and lovely and warm to me. It's been a really monumental experience, really important experience for me as a professional. I can't thank those people enough for making me feel appreciated. It's such a gift to be able to do that for people, and I truly don't think they understand how big a gift it is for somebody like myself to hear someone say, I listened to your work and I thought it was awesome. I really liked it, or that character really spoke to me. That is beyond moving. I could cash a bazillion paychecks. That would be awesome, but it doesn't quite come up to what that means when you're trying to go to sleep at night. It's a great feeling.
And have you been to like the local conventions and stuff like that for My Little Pony? I think were you a guest at one point?
Yeah, I've done a few cons over the last couple months. Of course, they've all been virtual.
Oh, yeah.
So I've done a bunch of virtual pony cons, which has been really great, like really incredible, like wonderful job putting those things together and running those things. I don't know how these people do it, but they're incredible. They're really good at it, and they're great to us voice actors, their guests. It's really cool.
Yes, I mean on that, yeah, virtual conventions are something that have taken off, especially for anime. There have been quite a few of them over the last year, and it's something that's still a work in progress. People are trying to figure out, but for like Q&A and panel content, it really does work, and I think it's also great for people who can't actually make it to who previously weren't able to make it to physical conventions. Which when you live in a place like Vancouver, it's easy to remember that. Not everyone in North America can get to a convention easily, especially in certain parts of Canada. And,
no doubt, yeah.
And like on that note of our pandemic life right now, I know obviously you can't talk much about specific things you've been working on, but how has the pandemic, COVID-19, like impacted your work? Obviously, I would imagine you were already doing a lot of stuff remotely, and you're doing more stuff remotely. What's your experience been?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I was just having this conversation with a fellow voice actor yesterday, because we were at a studio and we happened to like just pass each other in the green room, and like typically now I guess it's one actor in the building at a time, basically. But we just happened to pass each other in the green room, and we kind of joked about it. We're like, look at us, there are two actors in the green room together. And I in that moment I realized how much I missed that, like how much I just missed like sitting around and listening to a bunch of us goofy VAs just jaw and talk. And, you know, I think there's a lot of things that have changed. And one of the things is it's really hard to get the temperature of the town. I don't really know what's recording, and I don't really know what other people are doing.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's, you know, you come to terms with the fact that you're going to lose out on jobs, and you're not going to be right for a job, and you're not going to get cast for the thing. But it's a different thing when you get to go to an audition and you get to see Vincent Tong or Adrian Petru or Brian Doe, and you see these people and you go, right, like these are the people that I'm going up against, and I love these people. And if they get it, then great. It's so much better. It's so much nicer to do that than to just record a thing in your closet, send it off, and then just be like, well, I wonder if that'll go. I guess I'll wait 4 months and find out. It's a bummer. I love the people in this industry, in this town so much. They're the lifeblood of, they're what makes this town good. You know, just a tremendous amount of talent, but a tremendous amount of like professional respect and admiration, between all of us. And it just sucks that we've lost that a bit.
Yeah. That's
and
the part
I hope we go back. I hope we go back to getting to record ensembles and getting to audition in studio together. If the industry continues to kind of trend toward like get a home studio, get a space where you can record at home, I don't know if I see myself pursuing it as vigorously as I have, because I can make voices in my closet till I'm blue in the face, but I've always just wanted people to witness me, just watch me perform, just let me do the thing I like doing in front of you, and then ideally clap for me and tell me I'm pretty, you know, like it's all I've ever wanted. I just want to perform in front of people, and I just don't get the same sense of satisfaction when I'm doing that alone in my closet at home.
Yeah, I mean, much has been said about how animation can thrive because it's one of the easiest professional productions to do, you know, remotely during a pandemic. But I don't think people realize what you lose when, when you lose that interpersonal element that you have with working in the industry. And that's a really good point. And yeah, I hope things can stabilize for you and for everyone soon when it comes to that. But
there are bigger fish to fry in this in this time, of course. But
yeah. We can still mourn the less significant too.
Indeed.
Yeah.
There's just magic. There's magic in the room when you get a bunch of voice actors together, and you're all looking the same direction, and you're all doing a show together. And especially as a young and up and coming voice actor, one of the most formative things for me was getting in some of those early prelay shows where maybe I had like 3 or 4 lines, but then I just like sit and watch everybody work. And like, I learned so much, and I stole so many good ideas, and it's an incredibly formative thing to do, to watch your heroes do the work. And that's another thing that's kind of being lost, especially for younger and up and coming kind of VOs.
Yeah. A couple more of your roles I wanted to dig into a little more before we wrap up. One, I know you have been Spider-Man in a few of the Marvel video games in the last couple of years, which I understand is something that you are positive about.
Yeah, as I don't think I've been Spidey in any video games. I've been Spidey for a series of animated shorts that Marvel did. And I've been Spider-Man for Marvel and for Lego as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was a video game. I guess I didn't do my research well enough.
I wish, man. I would love to play I'd love to play Spidey in anything, but being in a video game would be very cool too. The Spider-Man thing is crazy because it's a resume topper for life, man. It may have been one of the first cartoons I watched religiously, was the 1960s Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I watched it all the time, as much as I could. So getting the opportunity to play the role of Spider-Man for as long as I have and for as many times as I have it's still like a pinch me moment. It's ludicrous.
Let's talk about, I think, probably your biggest, most recent role that's been released, which is Arashi in Zoids Wild. Again, the shonen protagonist lead in an anime.
Yeah. That was that. I mean, Zoids was great. Zoids was an awesome experience, and it was one of those times where I went in for the audition, and I was auditioning for Carl, and Carl knows what I can do, and we had a great time doing the audition together, and I left and I felt pretty confident and felt pretty good, and then I ended up getting the part. Well, the part was given to somebody else, and it was recast, and they gave it to me, and I was friggin' jazzed, man, like, because I knew it was a long series, but more than anything, I knew that I was going to get to work with Carl and the excellent engineers at Ocean, who I just love, man. Like the slate of amazing engineers at Ocean, it's just incredible. And anyways, so Zoids was friggin' great. It was a good, 2 years of just consistent work, which is a dream. And then like working with Carl, come on, it was amazing.
Yeah. So obviously you can't talk about stuff you're working on specifically, but like how are things for you in general right now? How is there anything you're up to? Where are you at?
That's kind of you to ask. Where am I at? I'm doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Work is work. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's hit or miss. But in many ways, that's how it's always been. Like the job is uncertainty, a lot of the time. So my professional life hasn't changed so much aside from the obvious stuff. Yeah, man, it's ebbs and flows. Sometimes things are good and sometimes things aren't, but I'm uniquely privileged, in the position I'm in, that I've been able to keep my head above water and, like professionally and financially to some extent. But I keep thinking about there will be a time, maybe hopefully this summer, but certainly in summer of 2022, where I will be sitting around the park with some of my friends, and we'll have been sitting together for 90 minutes, and we'll all just realize that we hadn't talked about COVID or Donald Trump in 90 minutes. And that's the dream here. I just want to get to a point where I don't talk about those things, or rather we're not forced to talk about those things because it's exhausting, and it's done an incredible number on our mental health as a society. It's exhausting.
I agree.
Yeah. So I'm tired but optimistic, and as the days get longer and as things get brighter and as the vaccine continues to roll out, I just think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we just got to keep riding these waves and stay safe and, staying close while staying distant. It's a really paradoxical and bizarre way to live. And it's not the way that humans are designed to live. We're designed to be social and to be together. And everyone has done, for the most part, everyone has done a really marvelous job of looking after one another. I think there's a lot of news that you see about people behaving badly and people doing bad things. And while those are important stories, I don't think that is the story. I think the story is that we are incredibly resilient, and we should be very proud of how we dealt with this in this moment, especially young kids, especially young people. This is an insane collective global trauma that we're all living through, and just to get through it is to succeed.
Thanks, Cole. Thanks a lot for coming on the show. So where can people find you online? You're pretty accessible on social media and stuff.
I don't know. I mean, you're welcome to follow me on Twitter. At Cole MF Howard. It's very political, and it is very much me. I'm not.
That's fine. I think that's all of us now. You have some words for Jason Kenney, and you're not alone.
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter to listen to me rail about my politics. Maybe when lockdown ends, I might get back on doing Instagram and stuff, but I have had no interest in doing that lately. And yeah, Twitter is basically the only social media I interact with on a regular basis. But I think that kind of sums it up. How boring.
No, it's fine. Twitter's for better or worse. Twitter is where the action is these days. As much as we all hate it. So
yeah, it's a weird space for discourse, but whatever. It's how you got in touch with me, man. It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
It worked.
So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning into Zonan Canada. You can reach me on Twitter @jbetteridge or email zonancanada@gmail.com. The theme song is by Ultra Klystron. You can find that on his album Packet Flood, and that's at ultraklystron.com. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever you use for getting your podcasts. I do have a Coffee account as well. If you like what I do, you can always send me a few dollars. That's at ko-fi.com/zonancanada. Thanks a lot, everyone. See you again.